All right. What does it mean to um, procrastinate? It simply means not to follow through on what you ought to do. To be a procrastinator is to form an habit or to build a character where you simply don't follow through on what you ought to do. When you ought to do something, you find ways to move into the future what ought to be done now. You see, and one of the dangers of procrastination is that you replace what ought to be done now with something much more irrelevant. So there are two sides to procrastination. First, you are moving into the future, what ought to be done now. Then you are replacing what ought to be done now with something irrelevant. And sometimes that's what people don't talk about. It's the fact that when you procrastinate what you ought to do, you are actually not doing something meaningful with the time that should bring a level of value at the level of what you have pushed aside. Okay? So you understand that. To be a procrastinator is to form the habit of moving for later what ought to be done now. All right? So, to procrastinate is to, look at this, is to build an habit around delaying what needs immediate action. So, the issue is that a person given to procrastination has a way of delaying what requires urgent action. Okay? And this simple thing we are talking about is the biggest reason why many people have died unfulfilled. It is the biggest reason why many people went to their grave unhappy. It is the biggest reason why many people died as mediocres. It is the biggest reason why many people only had dreams and never accomplished those dreams, because they kept shifting and shifting. And you see, this is it. The mistake people make around the subject of procrastination is that they think that every season lasts forever. Let me say it again. A procrastinator thinks that he will always have the same opportunity to do later what ought to be done now. And that's costly. To assume that seasons will hang around forever, to assume that opportunities will hang around forever, is to take a very, very serious risk. Because nothing lasts forever. You will not always have the same opportunity to make sense. You will not always have the same opportunity to do what you ought to do. You will not always have the same opportunity to accomplish what needs to be accomplished.